Hello, everyone who's already in this webinar. Welcome to the Courtaulds online open day for the MA in the Conservation of Easel Paintings. We're just waiting for participants to enter the room, so we'll just wait a couple of minutes before we start. And when I get the go-ahead, we'll begin.
I think we can kick off.
We can start. Thanks, Shika. Thank you. So welcome everyone to the Courtaulds online open day for the MA in the Conservation of Easel Paintings. I'm Pippa Balch. I'm a senior lecturer here in the Department of Conservation and head of programme for this MA. And like all of the faculty in this department, I'm also a trained paintings conservator myself. Also joining me are my colleague Alex Hawkins, Head of Admissions, who you can see on screen, and two of our current students, Ursi on the left and Kay on the right, who are both second year students on the MA Conservation of Easel Paintings. We'll have time for questions after our presentation, and so please do write your questions for any of us in the chat as we go along. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available soon after the event, so you can rewatch it at your leisure. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble advancing my slide. There we go. Okay, so the presentation will be in this format. First of all, I've got a few slides just outlining who we are at the Courtauld and why you might choose to come and study here, and in particular to study conservation here. And then I'll give an overview of the course, highlighting some special elements, which will take about 15 minutes. And then I'll invite Alex Hawkins to talk about the application process, and then there'll be time for Q&A. So to begin my introduction, this is Somerset House, where we're currently sitting, Kay, Ursi and I. And this is the Courtaulds' home at Somerset House, where I am. It's on the Strand, close to Covent Garden in central London. Trafalgar Square and the National Gallery are a 10-minute walk away. And actually, I took those two photographs on the right of the slide this morning, since it was such a nice morning. So you can see the view from the Strand, and the photograph at the bottom is you can just about make out Nelson's Column, which is 10 minutes walk away. This is where the conservation department is and the studios, and the majority of teaching of our MA takes place here. Just next door, also in Somerset House, is the Courtauld Gallery. And the gallery is home to an absolutely exceptional collection of artworks, and students have the opportunity to get to know the collection well when they study here. There's more information on this slide that you can come back to on the recording later, but there are opportunities to interact with the collection in many ways and an exciting exhibition programme. In conservation, we do regularly take advantage of the gallery for our teaching. Here you can see our first years are taking part in a seminar in the centre picture in the Medieval Gallery, which is led by Professor Susie Nash, who is one of our History of Art faculty. Conservation students work directly with paintings from our collection, both carrying out treatments, as you can see in the left-hand photograph, and also carrying out research and technical study. And we also work very closely with the gallery conservators and curators when we work on the collection. Last year, 2 of our first-year students, including Kay, who's with us today, carried out the technical study of Monet's view of Charing Cross Bridge, which once belonged to Winston Churchill and is now part of the National Trust collection, before it was cleaned by National Trust conservators and then hung in the Courtaulds' current exhibition. And this picture on the right is an image of us a week or two ago when we were able to visit the exhibition with our curator, who you can see in the image, Karen Sayre, before the public came into the gallery in the morning. And we're able to get up close and discuss Monet's working practice of this absolutely incredible series of paintings. So this is the kind of experience that we can have at the Courtauld, having a gallery as part of our institution. In addition, the Courtauld has a second teaching campus at Vernon Square near King's Cross, and this is where the majority of the history of art teaching takes place. But we also teach some seminars here, and importantly, it's where our library is, where Student Services is based, and where the Student Union are based. There's also a very, very full programme of extra lectures and events run by our research forum as part of our research culture. And most of those events take place at Vernon Square, although there are also events in the gallery back here at Somerset House. Vernon Square also has a large student common room and an outdoor space and garden. It takes just over 30 minutes to get to Vernon Square on foot, if you walk fast from Somerset House, and a little less by public transport and even less by bike. So King's Cross itself is a really nice and vibrant area to explore. In the next few years, work will commence to develop the east wing of Somerset House and bring the Courtauld back together in one campus. So what is the Courtauld? We are an institution with a special structure, and this has been the case from its outset. When the Courtauld was founded in 1932, the concept was to have a gallery, a history of art faculty, and what was then termed a technology department. So our conservation department is one of the very first in the UK and in fact in the world. There's more information on this slide, which you can come back later, but there's plenty to do in London, of course, and plenty going on that you could take advantage of if you come here. What else goes on at the Courtauld? The Research Forum, as I mentioned earlier, runs many, many events each year, which you can participate in. And in fact, that provides really good flexible work experience for students. They can work at these events in the Research Forum. And the Student Union also runs events and has societies that you can join. King's College London is a much larger college than us, right next door to Somerset House. And because the Courtauld has a strategic partnership with King's College, our students have access to facilities there. In conservation, we also have close links to scientific departments in King's, and we have arrangements in place so that we and our students can make use of some of their analytical equipment for the study of paintings. So this is an important relationship and right next door to us here at Somerset House. So that concludes my introduction to the Courtauld, and I'd now like to talk a bit more about the course structure here. Firstly, our MA Conservation of Easel Paintings takes place, as I said, at Somerset House, where we occupy the newly refurbished Conservation Centre. Here you can see some of our fully equipped year group studios on the left and right. And also we have other specialist spaces such as the photographic studio, which you can see here, and technical imaging facilities, and structural and varnishing studios, archives, and scientific labs. So it really is now a very well-equipped and beautifully refurbished centre. Our course is a 3-year full-time professional education in conservation. We take 6 students per year, and you can see our current first years here. And the key elements of the course, the key areas of study are listed here. We teach over 2 semesters, like the rest of the Courtauld, each of 12 weeks, but we have 5 weeks of assessment periods, and we schedule contextual visits and extra workshops in those times as well. So the core areas of our teaching are the principles and theory of easel paintings conservation, really importantly, practical conservation and studio practice, history of materials and techniques of paintings, technical study of paintings, the history of art, and students undertake research skills are built up and demonstrated throughout the course, culminating in a dissertation, which forms a substantial part of year 3. Turning to studio practice, as well as learning theoretical aspects of conservation, a special feature of our programme is that practical conservation is embedded in the programme from a very early stage, and students are handling and working directly with paintings from week 1, in fact. The studio is the place where theoretical knowledge is put into practice and practical visual and problem-solving skills are built up. Students are supervised closely in the studios by experienced tutors who can help answer your questions and guide your development. And by the final year, students feel confident to lead the treatment of their paintings. Students also gain useful transferable skills, such as learning how to manage their time, juggle deadlines, and present their work. And the studio is a really important preparation for joining the conservation profession later. We also encourage our students to try to arrange work experience during the summer vacations. We source paintings for students to work on from a range of places: museums, country houses, private collectors, and students will meet the owners and provide updates on their work, which is a really nice aspect of professional context. We give each student a range of practical projects so that they have a good portfolio of treatments to show any future employer. Students are allocated their own paintings to work on, so we don't allocate small parcels of work working alongside each other on paintings. We prefer to give a student a painting that they can really take ownership of. They can do the study, the research, and complete the treatment arc themselves. But having said that, we encourage a really collegial and collaborative spirit in the studios so that we all learn from what's going on around us. Feedback is given throughout the studio modules. There's a timetable discussion each week at the Easel with 2 tutors, and then as well as discussions which continue as needed with studio supervisors at other times of the week. And students, as well as these more informal interactions, students also present their studio projects to students and tutors in the department in a slightly more formal way, once or twice a year. Another strength of the programme is the integration of the study of artist materials and techniques, and the use of technical study and analysis to help us understand and characterise paintings and their physical histories. Students are introduced to different techniques from the beginning of the course and carry out their own technical study and research. Conservation faculty are leaders in the field and carry out their own research. And we also frequently study paintings in partnership with colleagues in the history of art faculty and the gallery, as well as external institutions such as the National Trust, English Heritage, and so on. The slide shows a photo on the right of Professor Aviva Bernstock giving a practical seminar on the use of scanning macro XRF in our photographic studio. And this is a piece of equipment that is very powerful, can be a very powerful tool, and we're one of few centres to own this equipment. Research by both students and faculty is definitely a strength of the Courtauld course, and students often publish or contribute to publications, including with other museums and colleagues. I just wanted to provide a quick note on science content, and that's really because applicants without science as a first degree often ask us about this. We do integrate applied science throughout the programme, and it is really important that scientific principles are understood and applied to the practical work we undertake. Reviewing your school science using a GCSE and A-level chemistry textbook could be a useful preparation. However, to ensure that students arrive with the basics in place, we have designed a bespoke science course which is taken by our offer holders over the summer and which they must pass before semester 1 begins. So this course takes the form of online resources and lessons in 14 topics with quizzes at the end to test knowledge. If this course is spread over a number of weeks, students have found it really manageable, and it seems to be a very useful preparation for the course. Now, I just want to give you a little bit more insight into the course structure of each year of the programme. In all 3 years, the contact teaching hours are usually a full 4 days, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. per week, over the 2 12-week semesters. And in the first year, as we've said, about 50% of time in the week is spent in the studio, 2.5 days a week. Lectures and seminars take up most of the rest of the week in the first year, with between a half and a full day reserved for independent study, reading for the lectures and assignments. So you can see that our course really is full time. In the teaching semesters, it really is very, very full on, and every minute of the week is taken up with the course. The vast majority of our teaching is in small groups, sometimes in our studio spaces, as you can see in the image on the left, and sometimes in seminar rooms at Somerset House or Vernon Square. And here are some images, I hope, just to give you a sense of what it's like working in the department here. The first strand of teaching for the first years in semester 1 involves the study of history of materials and techniques. And this comprises a lecture course and a 5-week practical course in the replication of historic painting techniques. So for this course, we bring paintings from the gallery collection into the studio. So here you can see at the top left, an early Italian painting. In the center, in the far distance, a 16th century Venetian canvas painting. And on the right, early 16th century Netherlandish painting with its replica. So you can see what this comprises. Students study the methods and materials used to produce artworks in the lectures and through reading contemporary treatises and through reading published studies. And the wider context of these periods are also included in this work. And then they go on to look very closely at the paintings and examine them and look at any previous reports and technical study that's been done on the paintings, and finally produce and replicate some of the painting techniques that they've observed. Alongside our history of materials and techniques and replica modules is a module to introduce students to methods of examination and analysis. And this runs all the way through semester 1 and 2. The most important tool is actually simply looking closely and under magnification. But we also commonly refer to technical imaging, such as X-rays, infrared images, and paint analysis, including microscopic paint samples. So students learn in their module to undertake technical study themselves and to interpret the images and results they produce. And this culminates in the completion of a full technical report of a painting in the department, working in pairs in semester 2. After reading week in week 7, the first years receive their first paintings to treat. And a lecture course begins in the principles and theory of conservation, which keeps pace with the conservation work in the studios, so that theoretical knowledge can be put to good use in real-life treatments. Our current first years have just now finished their condition reports for their first paintings and are beginning treatment. They've so far had classes in photography, in documentation practice, and in surface cleaning to equip them for this work. In fact, this morning, they had their first lecture in varnish removal, which is what they'll be considering next. The students are closely supervised as techniques in the studio are demonstrated and learnt for the first time, but work with more independence as the course progresses. And our support for the students is tailored to the pace and needs of each student. By the end of the first year, at the end of the first year in the assessment period in May, the students do a 2-week specialist workshop in paper conservation, which is run by our gallery paper conservator, Kate Edmondson. And they also have workshops in woodworking skills and framing. In the second year, there's more time in the studios, and students will be working on 2 or 3 paintings consecutively. Students tend to enjoy the practical focus in the second year and develop in confidence and experience. As well as aesthetic work, we often carry out structural work such as panel repair and repair to canvas supports. And you can see here some slides illustrating that. You can see some tear mending taking place under the microscope. And you can also see some structural work to canvas, the restretching and looming of a painting prior to its lining. And on the far left, you can see an image of panel work in progress, the repair of splits in this early 16th century panel. Also in year 2, easel painting students are offered the opportunity to take part in painting pairs, which is a program we run, a chance for our students, postgraduate students from the history of art and curating, to work collaboratively with one of our second year students to research a painting being treated in the department. They present their research in 2 talks and write it up as a scholarly essay. We select paintings to give a range of objects and of likely research questions. Our current second years have just received, so Kay and Ursi included, have just received their painting pair paintings, and they've met their research partners. And the image I've chosen is an image from last week of the initial examination of one of the paintings in this project. This year, the first talks will be held, by the way, on the 30th of January, and will soon be available to book via the research forum on our website. So you can look at our website and book yourself in. On the right of the slide is a previous Painting Pairs project where an X-ray of this painting by Wyndham Lewis, which is from Leeds City Art Gallery, revealed a completely different composition underneath. The website linked there has a page with further information and previous reports from the Painting Pairs programme, which you can read. Half a day a week in the second year is taken up with specialist lectures and assignments. In semester 1, a course in preventive conservation culminates in the production of an environmental survey of a building. And on the left, you can see a slide of students on the roof of a National Trust property a couple of years ago. In semester 2, second year students alongside third years have lectures and seminars to develop research skills, which culminate in students in the case of the second year students, culminates in students presenting their own research proposals for their upcoming third year research projects. They in the third years also have lectures highlighting recent research in specialist areas of conservation, such as modern and contemporary paintings conservation or panel paintings conservation. And on the right, you can see an image of a workshop that we ran a couple of years ago on the cleaning of acrylic paintings, which is a very specialist area of conservation. At the end of the second year, in the assessment period in May, students have a series of studio visits, usually in London, to conservation studios, scientific departments, and museum conservation departments to provide professional context to the work they do in the Courtauld. So moving to the third year, in the third year, a substantial portion of the year is spent on the research project and dissertation. Students choose a wide range of subject matter for these, and I've added a couple of past projects here to the slide. But this year, there are projects on conservation practice, painting materials and techniques, and sustainable packaging, for instance. In the summer, between the second and third year, students do the preparatory reading for their dissertation projects. And then the first 9 weeks of semester 1 is spent on the research to produce a draft. So our current third years have just finished that and are now back in the studios. And they'll stay now in the studios between now and the end of semester 2. By the third year, students are working with much more independence and a high level of proficiency in the studios. We run careers sessions to help hone interview and application skills at this point in the year as well. As well as the specialist teaching delivered with the second years, the third years have research and publication skills sessions, culminating in a presentation and poster or video piece on their dissertation research. They also present at the annual Jerry Headley Student Symposium, which is organised in turn by students at the Courtauld, the Hamilton Carr Institute and Northumbria University, which also run postgraduate courses in painters conservation. As well as the second year professional context visits in London, we do go on a study trip to in reading week of semester 2, and we take the second and third years to this. And we typically organise 3 days of visits, and you can see some of the places we've been on the slide here. These trips are always really enjoyable chances to discuss different approaches and to meet colleagues working in different countries, and of course to visit museum collections. Now, I haven't got a slide for this, but I wanted to just add a note on assessment methods on the course. Just to say that all the first year modules must be passed to transfer to the second year, but the marks for the first year do not count towards the final degree, which is a combination of second and third year grades. And assessments, we use lots of different forms of assessment. Students are assessed on presentations, on their conservation reports, on handouts, on specialist subjects, by short essays, and continuous assessment by studio supervisors. And feedback's given on draft work or formative presentations. At many points in the programme, students are assigned a personal tutor in the department as well, who will help monitor and help with their progress through the course. Finally, we are a small and close-knit department, and the students arrange usually themed end-of-term parties at the end of each semester, and we do have a small breakout tea room here at Somerset House, which is shared by conservation students for the Easels and Walls programme. So we get to know the wall paintings conservation students well. Now, I've now got a couple of slides on the progression from the course before I hand over to Alex on the application process. Graduate careers. So, as you might expect, our course is designed to produce graduates who are prepared for a professional career or further study in the conservation of easel paintings. But this is actually quite a diverse range of careers and jobs. So, for example, conservation practice, so working as conservators, but in a wide range of contexts. So we have graduates who are who've been successful in getting jobs as conservators in major museums and galleries and historic houses, or the National Trust, English Heritage, but also who work in private practice. We've had graduates who have ended up with careers in the technical study of paintings and scientific analysis of artworks. We've got graduates who have become preventive conservators and work in preventive conservation and collections care, in project management. We've got graduates who are undertaking or have undertaken PhDs, and of course those who have ended up teaching in academia or in conservation education. That's not to say, I just wanted to add that jobs are easy to find. They're not. It's competitive, but our graduates are in a really good position to compete for positions and to continue their development as conservators. And many of our graduates have developed diverse portfolio careers, and which means that they have periods when they work freelance or alongside work in a museum setting, and others have chosen to continue their studies and undertake PhDs. As well as the more conservation-specific skills, the MA in Conservation of Easel Paintings also does equip students with highly transferable skills, and I've listed some of those here. There is a careers service here at the Courtauld, and through that, students can book one-to-one careers appointments. They can organise practice interviews. We also have some specialist seminars for conservation students to help with things like developing a portfolio, for applying for jobs, and we have alumni insight sessions as well. So we invite our alumni to tell us about how they developed in their careers. And we have a strong alumni network across the world. Graduates of our course often remain in contact with each other for decades to come. So I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague, Alex Hawkins, who can tell you a bit more about applying to the Courtauld.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've heard about the programme and why you might want to consider applying for it. I'll talk a bit about the practicalities of the application process itself. So firstly, onto the next slide, we'll situate ourselves in the admission cycle at the moment. So applications for 2025 entry opened a few weeks ago now. The application deadline specifically for the Conservation of Easel Paintings programme is on the 6th of January 2025. Just a note, kind of look at the bottom there, new this year, our application portal does allow you to apply to up to 2 programmes. If you're considering applying, for example, for the Conservation of Easel Paintings programme and another programme, you would need to get your application in and submitted for the earlier deadline there of the 6th of January. By the end of January, invitations to interview would have gone out, and then in between the 10th and the 14th of February, the interviews will be held online. And I'll get into kind of some of the process of that in just a moment. Entry requirements for the programme, we typically look for students from the UK to have achieved a good 2-1 in their first degree, and that can be in fine art, history of art, or in the natural sciences. Although we do consider applications from students with other forms of academic and relevant professional experience too. And the equivalent kind of a qualification there for overseas students, it's the equivalent to a good 2-1, which we normally, as I say, often is equivalent to 65% in a UK degree. And the example here we use is for a US application would have a GPA of 3.5 or something around that. Good manual dexterity and normal colour vision are essential too. And that kind of bears out in the selection process. So the application form, in addition to asking for a lot of kind of typical parts of an application form, your personal details, a CV, etc., has a specific element for the MA Conservation of Easel Paintings programme. So in addition to a 300-word personal statement, which is kind of a short part that you can kind of talk to us about yourself and your kind of journey, your aspirations in a bit of a short form there. You're also asked some specific questions. So why you want to study the paintings conservation programme at the Courtauld, your kind of relevant research into the field, projects, dissertations, and work experience, and your experience of fine art, history of art, or science, where they're not your main area of study previously. It kind of gives us an ability to see your kind of journey up until this point to the programme. We don't expect candidates to have a deep knowledge of all 3 fields, and as Pippa touched upon, you know, certainly there are aspects of the course that kind of bring people up to speed and kind of test you in that first year as well. So you don't have to necessarily overly worry about covering all of those things, but it is useful for us to get a sense of that. Go to the next slide. Just briefly touching upon the selection process. So it's narrowed down from the wider application pool to 18 applicants who are invited to interview. I won't go into all the details here. You can catch some of that on kind of review later. If you have any questions about it, we'll be happy to talk a bit more about that as well. But we give a lot more information about the process and the kind of time frame for that at the point that you're invited to interview. We do ask for a written work sample. We usually say this should be from your undergraduate dissertation, but obviously, you know, people apply from different disciplines and different areas of higher study. So it might be that you need to write something new. There's always an opportunity for you to kind of think about what that might be and how you might kind of get to that kind of word limit, depending on, you know, the kind of written work you've competed in the past. So as an example, a question that we often get, can you submit 2 works that kind of add up to the word limit? That's completely fine. The key thing is to give us a bit of context as to what you're submitting, but it's just a good idea to kind of think about what your best foot forward is for your written work sample. It gives us a flavour of your ability to write in an academic context. So it's really a useful part of the process. On to the next slide. So as I say, a lot of the other parts of the application form are kind of what you might expect. So some of that will be submitting your previous study. If you're in progress at the moment, that will be an in progress transcript. So kind of something that summarises your study up to the point that you're applying. If you've completed, it will be your kind of final degree transcript. And that will always be in an electronic form. So either a scan or something that you can download and submit as the application. On to the next slide, we have the references. So typically we do really prioritize academic references, but if you've been out of education for a little bit of time, and I think sometimes in particular for our more practical programs, you may have work experience which is directly relevant, and that can be more useful sometimes than an academic reference. Sometimes it's good to have a balance, maybe one, one from either of those options. They are given a kind of full guidance of what to submit, but it's kind of classic things around your in an academic reference context. It will be your academic writing skills or your study skills, and in a professional reference, it will be things that are transferable into the program. And we asked for 2 of those. And as I say, other kind of parts of the process is, a passport, an ID photo that will end up becoming your student ID photo, a CV, which is useful, particularly in the context of that 300 words personal statement and the questions we ask. That can be quite short sometimes. So it's useful to have the CV in there to fill in the gaps. You don't have to address everything in that personal statement. Also, there's the point where you supply either a completed proof of English language requirement if you need to, or indicate how you will be meeting that in the future. You don't have to have it at the time that you apply. It can come through in the coming months. So it will be part of a conditional offer if that's required. So kind of onto out of the application process itself and onto the other areas around that, so scholarships and funding first. This year we have our MA Courtauld Scholarship. The applications for that will close on the 20th of January, so a little bit after the programme application deadline for the Easels programme. We're offering a limited number of scholarships that will be at 15,000, just over 15,000 for the year. If you are successful in securing one of those, it will be held at that amount for the duration of the programme. So if you're successful in securing an award, it rolls over for the 3 years of the programme. There's a number of specific external funds that are available for the programme too. These are listed on the website, and kind of information on how to apply. Some of the guidance around that is there too. Regrettably, this programme isn't eligible for the UK Masters government funding. That's an unfortunate kind of side effect of the 3-year length, but obviously the advantages of the depth of the programme necessitate that, unfortunately. And just a quick note that there is a hardship fund that is available for those kind of emergency situations that come up. Sometimes it will be that kind of little moment sometimes that you just need a little bit of a bridging amount if there's an emergency where there's a crisis in your rented accommodation. There's a process where we can help you out in that situation, and just make sure that you're not kind of under undue stress that's outside of your control. And then finally, from my section is accommodation. So we have, for postgraduate students, our own halls of residence, which is Duchy House, which is situated really close to the Somerset House campus, just pretty much on Waterloo Bridge. So there's a number of rooms there. that have a range of kind of price points, from kind of shared bathroom accommodation, which is more affordable, through to slightly more spacious en suites. We also have a number of rooms available through the University of London intercollegiate halls. They're typically based in Bloomsbury, and you'll be sharing with, or you're sharing the kind of halls with other students from a variety of different institutions within London. We say here that it's mainly for international students, but the kind of way that we prioritise things is based on if you've studied in the UK before or not, your distance from London in particular. So if you're a home student, don't necessarily rule yourself out of consideration for accommodation. Indeed, there's a lot of home students who do get that. It's that distance, and if you've studied in the UK before, not specifically in London too, that kind of familiarity with London can be the difference there. That's the end of my section. Just to say, if you have any questions outside of the Q&A section just coming up, this is the email address to contact us on. It's the pgadmissions@courtauld.ac.uk email address there. There's an in-person open evening coming up on Monday, the 2nd of December.
Yeah, yeah, that's coming up. And,
That's coming up, yes.
And yeah, I will be leading that with Aviva Burnstock and with the students of the programme. So it's a chance to visit the studios here. We'll ask people to view this recording first so that they come prepared with that knowledge, but it's really a chance to visit our studios. That'll be lovely to see some of you, I hope. Now, I think what I'll do is I'll stop sharing and then open the floor to questions. Oh. Okay. So, are there any questions so far? Let me look. I can't see any.
Yeah, but yeah, so please do, if you have any questions, put them in via the Q&A part.
Oh,
first one in.
No, I've just realised something. I totally forgot to properly ask Ursi and Kay, our students, to say a little bit about themselves. So I'm just going to do that while we wait, because I meant to do that so that you would all think of questions to ask them later. So if you'd unmute yourself, please, just tell us a little bit.
Hiya, so I'm Ursi. I'm a second year student here, as Pip said. So I did my undergrad in the history of art here in the UK. I was at the University of Cambridge. And then I did my application to study here in the final year of university. But I was actually unsuccessful in that year, and I got put on the wait list. And it's nice to know, I think, as a potential applicant, that coming back the year after and reapplying, having strengthened your application often does work, and that's why I'm here now. So that was actually a really great year out for me. So that is something to think about, is applying twice is absolutely fine and it's quite common. Yeah, so I had a little bit of chemistry experience. I did my A-level in chemistry, but I hadn't done a degree, but I found chemistry really manageable here. And yeah, my fine art was, I did art at school. I went to life drawing classes. I did a little bit of my own art, but it's definitely not the strongest thing. I came with art history as my predominant application strength, and I'd done a little bit of work practically in my year off that related directly to conservation, which was great, but it's not required.
Yeah, and then I am Kay. I'm also in the second year, and I did my undergrad degree in art history in the US at the Missouri State University, and I had minors in museum studies and anthropology. And I took quite a few years off. I wasn't sure what sort of master's program I wanted to go into, so I did a wide variety of work between natural history museums, art museums, historic preservation. And after going through doing all of those things, I realized that what I really wanted to do was conservation. And so I took a couple of years to prepare for applying to North American schools. So I did take like formal chemistry classes with labs in order to have those credits for applying to American schools, which I'm glad I did, but it's also nice that it's not as, I mean, I didn't need to get that to get in here, but it's also nice to have that really solid chemistry background, or more solid, because I didn't have much other chemistry. But so I really enjoyed having a lot of time between my degrees and being able to have a lot of practical, like real life work experience, not even necessarily in conservation, but yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
about it. Anything else?
Thank you. And I think that's really useful. Well, I hope that's useful for participants to hear those two stories. So thank you very much. And I think it might actually help to answer one or two of the questions we've now got in the chat. So I'll just turn to the chat now. A couple of people have asked how many applications we receive each year. We receive, it varies a little bit, but we receive a lot. We receive maybe up to 50 or 60 for the course. It is quite competitive. Some years a bit less, some years 30, but I would say we always have many more strong applications than we have places. That is definitely true. Is it beneficial to submit your application earlier rather than later? I don't think it has. I think as long as you're submit it by the deadline, we don't look at them until the deadline. So
It can sometimes be useful to submit a little bit early just to make sure the references come through.
Very good point. Yes. Sorry, Alex, you're absolutely right. That's true. If you are ready to submit early, please do, because it really helps us to have the references in place when we start to consider all the applicants. So yes, please do if you can. There's a question about English language. Alex, do you want to?
Yeah, so just a question about sort of specific, if you've studied in English as a language of instruction in a non-English speaking country. So there's lots of different ways of having exemption from needing to provide English language, proof of English language. In a very specific case like this, where it's a university that teaches in English in a non-English speaking country, it's often just best to contact us at the PG admissions address, and we'll take a look at that in more detail. Sometimes that can be sufficient for proof of exemption. Sometimes we will ask you to supplement that still. It can be really case by case in that instance. It might be sometimes a good idea to kind of just project ahead and think you might need to, if it's not the case for exemption isn't clear from the outset. Start to think about how to apply for the test if you need to, just so that you have that in mind early. It's a bonus then if you don't need to, but then you've already kind of done the groundwork to make sure that you can do it in time if you do need to. That'd be my bit of advice on there.
Thank you. There's a question here saying, what can students who come from other disciplines do to bolster their applications? I'm currently doing a French literature degree and was wondering what things I should focus on developing before I apply. Interesting. I would say, I mean, perhaps what Ursi and Kay have said helps you a bit. The most important thing from our point of view is to ascertain that you understand what you're applying for. I can't emphasize that enough. You need to know what you're applying for. It's a 3-year full-time course. It's expensive to come and study here, and you really need to be as sure as you can be that it is for you. So although there are definitely transferable skills to doing this course, essentially it is a professional education in paintings conservation. So there are plenty of resources on museums' websites where you can watch videos and read articles about conservation. There are plenty of publications to really, so that you can really inform yourself. We also do require some evidence of manual dexterity and ability through a portfolio. So you could consider, as Ursi did, going to life drawing classes or taking up that kind of thing. The science, it's important to be able to engage with the science. So you could revise your school level science. So there are those kind of ways that you can just help to inform yourself and to prepare yourself for an education in conservation. There's a question here that I might pass to Ursi and Kay. Are pre-program internships and volunteer conservation experiences important for making the most of what is taught during the degree? In other words, have you found that acquiring significant relevant experience prior to the program is helpful for your sense of fulfillment during study?
I think it's directly relevant conservation experience before you come as a student here is actually very difficult to find. And most conservation studios, if you reach out to them and say, hey, I want to study to be a conservation student, can I come and look at what you do? They might be open to that, but they would most often not be open to you coming to work there. And that's absolutely fine and normal. So I don't think you should necessarily expect that you would be able to get any, and that's fine. If you do, great. There were a few things that I found helpful that were sort of conservation related. I looked into what was available at my local museums and galleries, and they had like a conservation style volunteering project looking at how people interacted with museum objects, and that I thought was really helpful and really strengthened my application. And I think I went to look and talk to a few conservators at their conservation studios, and that was also great. And I think that helped me prepare myself to know what I was getting myself into for the course and helping me know if that was exactly what I wanted to do. And I think that's the most important thing, is to know, to come into the application process knowing that you do want to be a painting conservator and you do want to commit yourself to 3 years of study here, a very intense course. And I think that is probably the most useful thing you can get out of it. But I don't think you should expect to or try too hard to find yourself proper work experience before in a conservation studio, because that's not really how that happens. And I think you should take the pressure off yourself to do so, if that's right, Pippa.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you. I think that's probably reassuring. But there are plenty of things you can do to inform yourself, nevertheless, aren't there? What I was going to say is that I think that our students, once they're on the course, are pretty successful, and it's not always easy, but pretty successful at finding work experience in the summer vacations between the years. And that really does seem to be useful. So that really does give a different context to the stuff you've been learning and some different experiences in different studios. It can help you to kind of think about where you might want to work later and where you might not want to work even. But you know, it's all really useful experience. So so that I would say, but that's more achievable once you're already on the course and have a little bit of experience under your belt.
Yeah,
There's a question. Yeah, sorry, Kay, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I also had a hard time, but before applying, I had a hard time finding a conservator to sort of let me do a pre-program internship. Or sort of placement, but I ended up doing a lot of just personal research instead, where I was teaching myself how to make paint, and I was looking through fresco making techniques, and I was doing a lot of my own sort of it was just interesting to me, so I was doing it anyways. But it was actually, once got on the course, realized that it was incredibly useful to know how different types of paint were made. I learned so much about pigments and different mediums that it was immediately useful. And I assume that helped my application.
Yeah. No, absolutely right, Kay. I mean, that's the thing. And your enthusiasm and genuine interest came across to us. And that's the thing. So you could think, maybe those of you wishing to apply could think about that. You know, how do I transmit my genuine enthusiasm for this subject? That's, if you think of it from our point of view, we don't know you. How can you transmit that to us? There is a question about portfolios. It's difficult to assess what kind of work's best to show in the portfolio. Is painting preferable, or will drawing be considered? Absolutely, drawing is considered, painting is considered, even other kinds of projects, craft projects that might demonstrate that you have that kind of manual dexterity. It doesn't have to, we only ask for about 3 or 5 pieces of work to demonstrate that, to demonstrate manual skills and some aptitude for artistic practice, I would say. So, you know, anything you like, really. And another question, do students tend to stay local during the summers or travel to work opportunities? Oh, quite a variety, actually, I would say. And in fact, there is a fantastic funding body called the Zibby Garnett Fund, which in fact does fund travel, specifically the travel associated with work experience in different countries. So there are places, so some of our students do apply for that and travel quite far afield. Other students, students from already like Kay from North America or from other countries might go home and find work experience there. So yes, people do a mixture. And also here in the UK, students might travel to other parts of the UK for work experience. Now, I don't see any more questions, I don't think. I think we've answered everything in the chat. If we just give you a couple more minutes in case there's anything else that you'd like to say.
Or another question's come in about submitting a conservation report as their written work sample with historical analysis of artwork. I think that I'll throw that one over to you, Pippa. That seems like it could be, but as the person who would potentially be looking at it, what would you say for that?
Yes, I think if it contains so if some aspect of that report, it sounds like it in this case it is, if it does contain some historical analysis, something a little bit more essay-like, then I think that absolutely would be acceptable.
Could it be, off the top of my head, it might be a case where you would submit that in addition to something that's a bit more in a traditional academic writing context?
Yes, that I suppose might be a good idea. I mean, I guess the writing sample, we're looking for the ability to express yourself well in English and to express an argument and to formulate an argument and those sorts of things. So, but yes, in principle, yes. But as Alex said, you can submit more than one. Okay. I think that might be it. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful. And thank you to Alex and to Ursi and Kay for participating. And hope to see you soon.